The gift card landed between us with a soft plastic click. For a second, I thought Cynthia Thorne had placed it on the table by mistake. Then she folded her hands, gave me the same calm smile she used during layoffs, and said, "This replaces the performance bonus discussed in your review." I stared at the silver card. $20. My approved bonus had been $75,000. The conference room felt colder than it had a moment earlier. The glass walls had been switched to privacy mode, turning the rest of Zenith Retail Systems into a blur of moving shapes. Cynthia sat across from me in a navy suit, perfectly composed. A printed packet rested beside her elbow. "My name is Valerie Alden. I was 42 years old, and I had spent 4 years as Zenith's principal systems architect. I had built NovaGrid, the pricing engine behind nearly every major contract the company had won during that time. NovaGrid helped large retailers spot weak margins, adjust prices, and react to competitors within minutes. It had cut processing costs, improved renewals, and rescued Zenith from several painful client penalties. The board had approved my bonus after the system delivered results far beyond its targets. Now HR was replacing it with enough money for a simple lunch. Cynthia pushed the card closer. "The company has reclassified the award because of quarter-end priorities," she said. "Reclassified?" I repeated. "It was discretionary." "That is not how it was described in the signed approval," I said. Her smile tightened. A screen on the wall came alive. Reginald Vance, Zenith's chief executive officer, appeared from his office. He leaned toward the camera as if joining us for a friendly check-in. "Valerie," he said, "I understand this is disappointing." I looked from his face to the gift card. Disappointing is one word. He ignored that. "Your work is valued. No one is questioning your contribution, but leadership requires flexibility, especially from senior people." That was Reginald's favorite kind of sentence. It sounded respectful until you noticed the threat inside it. Cynthia opened the packet. "We also need you to sign an updated intellectual property acknowledgement. It is standard housekeeping." She turned the pages toward me. I did not touch the pen. The document was broader than anything I had signed before. It claimed Zenith owned every version of NovaGrid, including the core system I had created before joining the company. I felt the humiliation harden into focus. They were not only taking the money, they were trying to clean up the ownership record at the same meeting. I closed the packet. "I will need the bonus decision in writing," I said. "I also want the compensation file, the board approval, and the legal basis for this change." Cynthia's face lost some of its warmth. "This is not an adversarial meeting." "Then documentation should not be a problem," I replied. Reginald gave a small laugh. "Let's not turn a recognition issue into something larger." I met his eyes on the screen. "I agree." That answer seemed to satisfy him. It should not have. Cynthia tapped the unsigned form. "Are you refusing?" "I am declining to sign until my attorney reviews it," I said. The room went still. Reginald leaned back. "That kind of response can affect how people view your future here." There it was, clean, polished, and unmistakable. I slid the gift card back toward Cynthia. "Please include that statement in the written record." For the first time, she looked uncertain. The meeting ended 9 minutes later. No one raised their voice. No one felt it was necessary. My hands were steady, but my chest burned. I had missed birthdays, canceled vacations, and answered emergency calls at 3 o'clock in the morning for people who had just priced my loyalty at exactly $20. As I stepped into the hall, I opened the compensation approval on my phone. I had read it many times, but one line suddenly mattered more than every insult in that room. The $75,000 payment was due by midnight. It was not only a bonus, it was the exact purchase amount in Zenith's board-approved option to acquire the NovaGrid core code from my company, Alden Logic Solutions. Until that payment cleared, Zenith had only an exclusive license. At midnight, the option expired. The gift card did not count. I walked back to my office while people smiled at me through the glass, unaware that Zenith's most valuable advantage was 6 hours away from returning fully to its legal owner. For the first time in years, I stopped thinking like their employee. I started thinking like the woman who owned the code. I shut my office door and lowered the blinds. Only then did I let myself breathe. My hands were steady, but the rest of me felt hollow. I had missed birthdays, canceled vacations, and answered emergency calls at 3 o'clock in the morning for people who had just priced my loyalty at $20. For 18 months, Nova Grid had controlled my life. I slept with my laptop open beside me. When a grocery client's pricing feed failed during a holiday weekend, I stayed awake for 31 hours fixing it. When Zenith nearly missed a service deadline that could have cost millions, I rebuilt the damaged process before sunrise. Reginald had called me indispensable. Cynthia had called me a model leader. The board had called Nova Grid the engine of Zenith's future. But when it was time to honor the agreement, they called the payment discretionary. The $75,000 mattered, but not only because of the amount. It was proof that the company finally recognized what I had built. Reginald had promised that once the purchase closed, I would become head of platform strategy. I had turned down 2 outside approaches because I believed him. Now the promotion had disappeared into vague language about future opportunities, and HR had placed an ownership form in front of me like a routine signature. I opened the locked cabinet behind my desk and removed a thin folder. 4 years earlier, before Zenith hired me, I had built the first version of Nova Grid through my small company, Alden Logic Solutions. It began as a tool for independent retailers. Zenith wanted the technology, but it did not have the cash to buy it outright. So, the board approved a limited exclusive license. The arrangement was simple. Zenith could use the core engine, connect it to client systems, and sell services built around it. The company could not claim it created the original code. It could not transfer the engine to another owner, and it could not keep exclusive rights forever without completing the purchase option. The option price was $75,000. The payment had to arrive by the deadline and be recorded as payment for the acquisition, not as a gift, not as recognition, not as a future promise. I opened the digital contract and read the clause again. Then I checked the board minutes, the annual license notice, and the compensation approval. The documents matched. That was when I searched my email for Cynthia's name and the words bonus classification. A chain appeared from 3 weeks earlier. Cynthia had written to finance that the payment should be treated as discretionary compensation so it could be removed from the quarter. CFO Keith Sinclair replied less than 20 minutes later. This amount may be connected to the Nova Grid intellectual property option. Legal review is recommended before any change. Reginald answered from his phone. Proceed with the recognition alternative. We can handle paperwork afterward. I read that line 3 times. They had been warned. They knew the payment touched an ownership agreement. They simply believed they could cancel it, pressure me into signing a new form, and repair the record after the deadline. The betrayal was no longer a misunderstanding. It was a plan built on the belief that I would be too loyal, too shocked, or too afraid to resist. At 6:42 in the evening, I called my attorney, Anjali Mehta. I need you to review an option agreement tonight, I said. How urgent? It expires at midnight. I sent her the original code records, board minutes, signed license, compensation approval, HR packet, and email chain. I also copied everything to a secure personal archive, using only documents I was legally entitled to keep. Then I stayed at my desk. Outside my office, the building slowly emptied. Lights went dark across the floor. Somewhere near reception, someone laughed as the elevator doors closed. At 11:58, Anjali called. I have read it, she said. Do not sign anything. Do not accept a replacement payment. Let the deadline pass. I looked at the $20 gift card Cynthia had left inside the packet. At midnight, my laptop clock changed. Zenith's option expired without payment or any extension, and with one decision meant to save $74,980. They gave up exclusive control of technology worth millions. The next morning, Anjali called before I had finished my first coffee. Do not send anything yet, she said. I want to walk you through what changed at midnight. I closed my office door and opened the contract on my second screen. Anjali spoke slowly, knowing I needed the law in plain English, not legal theater. Zenith Retail Systems did not lose access to current client systems overnight. The agreement gives them a short stability period, so existing customers are not harmed. But the exclusive purchase option is dead. They cannot claim they own Nova Grid. They cannot promise new clients exclusive access, and they cannot receive future versions unless you approve a new license. I looked at the line on the screen. So I can license it elsewhere? Yes, she said, including to direct competitors. The words were simple, but they changed the shape of the room around me. For 4 years, Zenith had acted as if Novagrid belonged to them because they were the larger company. Their sales decks called it our proprietary engine. Reginald used it in investor meetings. Product leaders took credit for features they could not explain. But size did not create ownership. Documents did. Anjali and I spent the morning testing every part of the record. We did not depend on one clever clause. The original source code history showed I had built the core engine months before joining Zenith. The earliest files sat in a private repository registered to Alden Logic Solutions. The board minutes named my company as the owner. The patent filing listed me as the inventor. Zenith's engineers had built useful things around Novagrid. They owned the dashboards, client connectors, and internal tools created on company time. I had never disputed that, but the engine beneath those layers was mine. I also had 4 annual license notices signed by Reginald and Keith. Each notice confirmed the same split. Zenith had acknowledged my ownership every year, right up until the moment HR tried to rewrite it with a rush signature. That distinction mattered because Novagrid was not just another piece of software. Large retailers used it to compare thousands of price changes at once. It spotted margin leaks that human teams often missed. It showed when a promotion looked profitable but would actually lose money after shipping, discounts, and supplier costs. A client could adjust a national campaign in minutes instead of waiting days for analysts to rebuild spreadsheets. Zenith's sales team had built its growth story around being the only company with access to that engine. And now it was not. 2 firms had approached me before, Catalyst Analytics and Pinnacle Retail Labs. Both had offered serious money to license Novagrid. I had refused because Zenith held the exclusive right and because I believed Reginald intended to complete the purchase honestly. Now that restriction was gone. My first instinct was to call both firms before Zenith could react. Anjali stopped me. "Not yet," she said. "We follow the agreement perfectly. No shortcuts. The contract required a formal expiration notice and a stability period for current clients." I drafted the notice with Anjali, attached the relevant clause, and sent it to Reginald, Cynthia, Keith, and Zenith's general counsel. The message was simple. The purchase option had expired without payment. Zenith's exclusive license had ended. Existing systems would continue under the temporary stability terms. Any new use, sale, update, or deployment would require written authorization from Alden Logic Solutions. I did not threaten them. I did not mention Catalyst or Pinnacle. I did not demand my bonus back. At 10:16 in the morning, Reginald replied with one sentence, "We will discuss this internally." That was all. No apology, no legal argument, no claim that the payment had been made. Just delay. Anjali called again after reading his reply. "This is good," she said. "He sounds calm. He sounds like a man who has not read the contract yet." I looked through the glass wall toward the executive floor. Reginald was walking into a meeting with 2 product leaders, smiling as if the company still controlled everything it had controlled yesterday. "What happens when he reads it?" I asked. Anjali paused. "Then he will understand that any new deal you sign can be legal, permanent, and almost impossible for Zenith to undo." For the first time since Cynthia slid that gift card toward me, I smiled. I was not trapped inside their company anymore. They were operating inside my deadline. I spent the next 10 days building my response the way I built reliable systems, one verified layer at a time. No angry emails, no dramatic resignation, no hidden shutdown. Anjali created a secure data room containing every document for our case. The original repository records, board approval, license agreement, purchase option, patent filing, yearly ownership notices, and the email chain showing Keith had warned Reginald before the payment was canceled. I performed all work during the stability period perfectly. I fixed pricing feeds and helped trace errors, recording every activity. I separated the technology clearly. Zenith owned the outer dashboards, and Alden Logic Solutions owned the Novagrid core. I did not delete files or lock anyone out. My leverage came from what I owned, not from breaking what they had. Once the evidence was clean, Anjali contacted Catalyst and Pinnacle under separate non-disclosure agreements, informing them that Novagrid was available for licensing. Both firms responded within a day. Catalyst wanted grocery and pharmacy rights, while Pinnacle wanted apparel, furniture, and home goods rights. I designed 2 limited licenses. Keeping control of the core engine, the first offers were strong. Each company reviewed the performance records and patent history. Their numbers rose while Anjali negotiated terms. I continued walking into Zenith every morning as if nothing had changed. That seemed to bother Cynthia more than anger would have. On the 6th day, she called me into her office. "You have become less collaborative," she said. "I have completed every assigned support request. This is about attitude, not tasks. Your communication has felt guarded. I have been advised to keep ownership discussions in writing." Her mouth tightened. "Bringing lawyers into an internal compensation matter creates unnecessary tension. It stopped being only a compensation matter when you asked me to transfer intellectual property." She ended the meeting soon after that. The following morning, Reginald announced an investor presentation for the end of the month. He stood beside a screen showing rising revenue and new market targets. At the center of the presentation was Novagrid, "our exclusive technology advantage," he called it. I watched the product team applaud. Most had no idea anything had changed. Reginald believed he could ignore the expiration notice until I surrendered. He planned to use Zenith's claimed ownership of Novagrid to support a new funding round. That changed the risk. A false ownership statement presented to investors was securities fraud. I returned to my desk and forwarded the expiration notice to General Counsel and the Audit Committee Chair. I attached the option and asked them to confirm the investor materials would be corrected. I received no answer that day. 10 minutes after I sent the message, Reginald stopped outside my office and held my gaze through the glass. I did not look away. The trap was no longer about $75,000. It was about whether he would repeat a false statement after receiving written proof. And judging by the investor deck still glowing on the conference room screen, Reginald had already decided to keep talking in front of everyone. 3 days later, I attended the investor rehearsal. Reginald stood at the front, claiming full ownership of our proprietary pricing platform. Toby Jenkins, a newly promoted executive who had never written a line of core code, was credited with the technology. My name was a footnote, architecture support. When the rehearsal ended, Cynthia stopped me and presented a retroactive intellectual property assignment. The payment was $1 plus continued employment. "You want to buy an asset worth millions for $1? I asked. "The language confirms the company's understanding," she replied. "If you refuse, leadership will review your behavior." I slid it back. All future ownership requests should go through my attorney. By the end of the day, she placed me on a corrective action plan for resistance to leadership. This was clear whistleblower retaliation under California Labor Code. Section 1102.5. Since I refused to participate in a fraudulent retroactive transfer, Reginald removed me from the investor meeting and ordered engineering to prepare 3 new Novagrid deployments without my involvement. But the engineers could not build new releases from the protected core modules without authorization. Manuel Ruiz, an engineering manager, asked if we had written rights to the new forecasting module. I replied with the license clause, copying General Counsel. 2 more managers asked similar questions. Every question became another written warning. Meanwhile, Catalyst and Pinnacle submitted final offers worth $6,400,000 plus royalties. Both companies required proof that Zenith's option had expired and that no court order blocked the licenses. Anjali sent the board's legal committee one final notice. Zenith did not produce a valid dispute. Instead, Reginald told the board I was trying to hold the company hostage over a bonus. That lie made my decision easier. The following morning, I sat in Anjali's office and signed both agreements. Catalyst received grocery and pharmacy rights. Pinnacle received apparel and home goods rights. The payments moved into escrow. As I signed the last page, Anjali looked at me. "Once these close, Zenith's exclusive advantage is gone." I placed the pen on the table. They gave it away when they chose the gift card. The panic started the moment Zenith's audit committee opened Anjali's notice. At 8:12 in the morning, General Counsel emailed Reginald, Cynthia, Keith, and the board chair. Immediate review required. By 9, the investor presentation was paused. By 10, outside lawyers were examining the agreement. At 11:30 in the morning, Reginald called an emergency meeting. I arrived with Anjali and our evidence file. Reginald was already seated, furious. Valerie has removed company property and licensed it to competitors, he said. I placed my folder on the table. That is not what happened. You copied Zenith code, he asserted. No. Alden Logic Solutions licensed its pre-existing engine to Zenith. Zenith still owns every dashboard, connector, and internal tool its employees created. Outside counsel read the documents in silence. Finally, he looked at Reginald. Zenith had an exclusive license with an option to purchase. The purchase payment was not made before the deadline. Reginald pointed at me. Because she engineered the situation. Keith shifted in his chair. I turned to him. Was the payment request prepared? He stared at the table. Yes. Could it have been processed on time? Another pause. Yes. Outside counsel explained the consequences. Current client systems could keep running during the stability period, but Zenith could no longer promise exclusive future access. It could not treat NovaGrid as a fully owned asset in financing documents. That was why the investor presentation had been stopped. The problem did not remain inside the room for long. A major grocery client's procurement team emailed Zenith asking whether the company had misstated NovaGrid ownership during renewal talks. Then the lender supporting Zenith's expansion requested clarification because the engine appeared on a schedule of key company assets. At noon, Catalyst announced a new retail analytics partnership. An hour later, Pinnacle posted openings for implementation engineers with experience in automated pricing systems. Reginald's face became pale. Cynthia argued that the $20 card was a symbolic first payment. Outside counsel looked at her HR letter. This document says the card was a separate recognition award. It also says the $75,000 bonus was canceled. You cannot call it an acquisition payment after the deadline. Keith finally spoke. I warned Reginald the payment might be connected to the intellectual property option. Board Chair Helen Hastings had been listening by video. Preserve every email, message, approval record, and draft related to this matter. No one deletes anything. She scheduled a special board session for the following morning. The next morning, Helen Hastings, the board chair, led the meeting. Reginald spoke first. This company gave Valerie resources, yet she benefits competitors. Helen looked at me. Mrs. Alden, you may respond. I opened the evidence file showing the board the ownership timeline. The board approval from 4 years earlier named Alden Logic Solutions as the owner of the pre-existing NovaGrid core engine. The license agreement gave Zenith exclusive use but not permanent ownership. 4 annual notices repeated that Alden Logic Solutions owned the core. I placed the purchase option on the screen. The option required a $75,000 payment before midnight on the stated date, I said. The payment had to be recorded as acquisition consideration. Anjali displayed Keith's warning email and Reginald's reply. Proceed with the recognition alternative. We can handle paperwork afterward. No one spoke. I showed the cancellation letter, the $20 card, and the $1 assignment document. Helen looked directly at Cynthia. Why was this document presented after the original payment was canceled? Cynthia adjusted the papers on her desk. We believed the company already owned the technology. The assignment was meant to confirm that understanding. Then why offer consideration at all? Anjali asked. Cynthia did not answer. Finally, Anjali presented the Catalyst and Pinnacle licenses. Both had been signed after Zenith's option expired. Both were limited by market sector. Neither used Zenith's client data connectors or employee-created systems. Outside counsel explained the damage. Zenith could keep current systems stable during the transition period, but it no longer had exclusive future access. The combined license value was $6,400,000 plus royalties. Helen turned to Keith. Could the payment have been processed on time? He swallowed. Yes. Did Valerie prevent it? No. Reginald's face tightened. Keith is protecting himself. Cynthia interrupted. We were trying to improve quarter-end compensation numbers. We believed legal could correct the ownership language later. Her statement hung in the air. Reginald turned to glare at Cynthia. That was your decision. You approved it, she said. And you classified it. You told us to proceed. Their stories collapsed. I waited until the room became quiet, then I made my proposal. Zenith may purchase a 12-month non-exclusive transition license at market price. The agreement must use accurate ownership language. Current clients must be protected. No engineer should face retaliation. I will not return as an employee, transfer Alden Logic Solutions, or sign a false ownership statement. Helen closed her folder. At this moment, Mr. Vance, she sets the terms for the asset we must acquire. The board placed Mr. Vance on immediate administrative leave. His authority over financing, legal matters, and company communications was suspended. Cynthia was also placed on leave. All compensation records and intellectual property documents would be reviewed by outside counsel. The investigation later found that Reginald had allowed investors and directors to receive inaccurate ownership claims after being warned about the expired option, which exposed Zenith to severe liability for securities fraud. Furthermore, placing me on a corrective action plan for refusing to sign a retroactive IP assignment violated California Labor Code. Section 1102.5, exposing the company to whistleblower retaliation claims. Zenith removed Reginald as CEO. Cynthia's employment ended soon after. Keith kept his position only because he cooperated. The financing round was delayed, and Zenith publicly stated that some earlier descriptions of its technology ownership had been inaccurate. Through Alden Logic Solutions, I offered Zenith a 12-month non-exclusive transition license. The base rate matched the structure offered to Catalyst and Pinnacle. Payment had to be made in advance. Zenith could support current clients and complete approved projects, but it could no longer claim exclusive ownership or block my company from working with others. The board accepted. Zenith also settled my retaliation claim, paid my legal costs, removed the corrective action plan from my record, and issued a written statement confirming that I had followed the agreement. The $75,000 bonus no longer mattered. The two rival licenses, the annual royalties, and Zenith's transition payment gave Alden Logic Solutions enough money to operate independently. I rented a modest office, built a careful hiring plan, and began turning NovaGrid into a platform that could serve several industries. A few Zenith engineers contacted me later. I hired some of them, but only after they left properly. I told each person the same thing. Bring your experience, not Zenith's files. I would not build my future using the same kind of theft they had tried to commit against me. Months later, I attended a retail technology conference in Chicago. Catalyst, Pinnacle, and Zenith were all represented on the same panel. I sat in the audience while Zenith's interim CEO explained that the company used NovaGrid under a licensed partnership with Alden Logic Solutions. Licensed technology, not our proprietary engine, not a fully owned asset, not architecture support hidden in a footnote. My name appeared on the screen as founder and principal architect. The correction took less than 10 seconds to say, but I had waited 4 years to hear it. After the panel, Helen found me near the exit. "We should have understood the agreement earlier," she said. "You should have understood the person who built it," I replied. "I still have the $20 gift card. It sits in a locked drawer beside the first Catalyst license and a printed copy of Zenith's corrected ownership statement. Sometimes before an important meeting, I open that drawer and look at it. Not because I am angry, but because it reminds me how close I came to signing away my work just to remain welcome in a room that had never truly valued me." Cynthia thought the card would make the canceled bonus feel less cruel. Reginald thought paperwork could be repaired after power had already been taken. They believed $20 was enough to settle what I had built. In reality, it only released it.